are back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. At the close of 2021, my next guest wrote a piece that caught my eye immediately, and I wanted to talk to her about. Nathalie Baptiste is an opinion writer with HuffPost, and the piece was headlined, "The Biden administration is treating the pandemic like a personal problem," and it caught my eye. I suspect it caught a lot of people's eyes. So we invited her on the program, and she's here. She joins us now. Nathalie Baptiste, thanks for coming on the Zero Hour.
Hey, Richard, it's great to be here with you today.
Well, it's great to have you. So let's start with this. We don't always write our own headlines in the journalism business. Is this your headline?
This is actually my headline, and I'm glad that you asked that because I wasn't sure if it was going to cut it, and I was really happy when it did.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start with that. Why weren't you sure it was going to cut it?
You know, I didn't want to be unfair to Biden, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people's reaction to reading that headline is, oh, so you think he's just as bad as Trump? Absolutely not. I'm not a lunatic. However, there are a lot of things that we do need to be discussing about the Biden administration's handling of the pandemic so far.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And that's exactly how I took it. I didn't take it as either too easy or too hard on Biden. I took it as, nobody I know thinks that he's as bad as Trump with all of this. But on the other hand, it's a problem to me. You quote very early on the Biden, and the people who watch this show know this has been an issue with me, but you quote President Biden recently saying at a briefing, "We are looking at a winter of severe illness and death for the unvaccinated. For themselves, their families, and the hospitals they'll soon overwhelm. But here's good news. If you're vaccinated and you have your booster, you're protected from severe illness and death." However you cut it, that's basically saying to the people who are hospitalized and or dying from COVID, this is on you, right?
Exactly. And, it's almost as if, whether or not it's their own fault that they, went out to a COVID ward and breathed in all the air, that's besides the point. This is not a public health strategy. You're going to die and it's all your fault. It's simply not a public health strategy. I mean, that's like conversation over beers with your friends to blow off steam. And it's honestly kind of ridiculous that a president would say that.
Yeah, and yet I know people, reasonable people, nice people, good people, who heard that and say, yeah, it's about time somebody put this on them. So that gets to me, Nathalie, to a question of, are we looking at this the right way? And I think that's what your piece was saying, was that, first of all, and this is a constant refrain of mine, why are people not taking the vaccine? The cliche, let me be blunt, the cliche among a lot of white liberals I know is that it's white people who they consider rednecks, who just have a lot of hateful ideas, and this is just part of it. But as far as I understand, the last time I looked, it's people of all races, it's people of all income groups. It's a lot of times people who feel they can't take the time off work, or they don't trust the pharmaceutical companies, or they don't know if the science is sound, or they watch stations TV shows that get them worked up and agitated, which, may be unwise of them, but it's not like a literal hanging offense, right? So to me, it's kind of like, it's all too easy to dismiss, our fellow citizens instead of kind of trying to understand the problem at hand and working on it together. Do you got what I'm driving at?
Absolutely. I mean, I always joke, if you want a diverse coalition, just look at the unvaccinated. It's everybody. Right. We all have unvaccinated people in our lives, and we're just doing the best we can, at least trying to get them to mask up when they go out in public. But you make some really great points. And, right now, a lot of liberals are leaning on the unvaccinated that's the only problem with the pandemic right now. If only everybody was vaccinated, this wouldn't be happening. Well, guess who has COVID right now, even though they're vaccine boosted? Everyone. Everyone has COVID right now. You go on social media and everyone's like, guess who has COVID? Every single person you've ever met has COVID. So maybe it's not just unvaccinated people. Maybe it's the fact that everyone's still waiting in line to get tests and you can't go anywhere while you're waiting to get tested. So now you've got to call out of work. Now you've got to keep your kids home from school. And it just turns into this snowball effect. And all the administration can say is, well, those people didn't get vaccinated. Well, Biden, I'm vaccinated and I'm having a terrible time. Where's the help for me?
Right, right, absolutely. And there's another dimension to that too, which you mentioned, which is I, knock on wood, have not gotten COVID yet. I hope I don't, because even though I'm fully vaxxed and everything, I have complications that could make it tricky. But okay, I'm protected from severe illness and death, but that's not 100% true. There are people out there who, even if they're vaccinated and boosted, there could be a serious consequence. And the solution to that is a lot of testing, so that positive people, COVID positive people don't go out there and spread it, right? But you quote Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, scoffing at a reporter who asked her about tests, saying, should we just send one to every American? Well, other countries, as you point out, do send it to every citizen. So it's not such a crazy idea. So I guess what I thought your piece was pointing out, but I'd love your comments on, is that, obviously, a Democratic administration is a lot better than a Trump administration, but I think our ideology and mindset still needs some work. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, in late 2020, at that point, I was ready to vote for like a frog. I don't know. We could try anything. Let's see what happens. But the fact that the American public voted for someone like Joe Biden, who's been in public office for the entirety of his adult life, and all we're getting is, so you guys want tests? Like, you have to be kidding me. Yes, girl, that's like the minimum. We've been complaining about this for like 2 years. I don't know where you've been, but yes, we would all like tests. For the love of God, please.
Right. And speaking of this is on you, you quoted a statistic, Nathalie, that I hadn't focused on, but blew me away when I saw it in your piece. When Trump left office, the official COVID death toll hit 400,000. Nearly 1 year later, the grim number is more than 815,000. It might be legitimate for someone to say, okay, Joe Biden, it might be on me if I don't get tested, but this is on you too.
You can't be doing worse than the other guy. That's unacceptable.
Right.
That's just unacceptable. If these were two sports teams, it's like Trump went 0 for 70 the whole season, and somehow you're managing to do worse. You're losing negative games.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one, and then we'll pivot a little bit in a minute from just beating up on the administration, but final thing is. You pointed out, and then I also didn't know, and I try to follow this stuff, but you say when the Delta variant began spreading in July, it caused a surge, but Vice President Kamala Harris said in an interview that the administration didn't see the Omicron variant coming. The fact is, everybody, okay, maybe not one called Omicron that would have these particular features, everybody knew variants were going to come if we didn't get this thing under control, and if we didn't vaccinate the world, which we've done neither one of those things. So what does your gut tell you? You think people are getting skeptical of this administration and its handling of the disease?
Unfortunately, yeah. I think a lot of people are really, really disappointed, especially for the contingent of people who were like, it's not like I love Biden, but hey, his pandemic plan has got to be way better than simply not having the plan. So it's like really disappointing that this was like the one thing you were hinging your hopes on, and not even that's working out. And between Kamala Harris being bold enough to say that, well, we just didn't know this was coming, and kind of trying to walk it back like we didn't know about this specific mutation. Well, yeah, I mean, you're not a virologist and no one expects you to be vice president, so that's fine. But to pretend that we didn't know variants were a thing is just ridiculous. You've got the White House press secretary kind of like laughing at reporters who think they should be doing the bare minimum. And then you've got the CDC with their extremely confusing guidance that I've kind of just given up on. Whenever the CDC says something, I'm like, I don't know what that means. I'll just wear a mask, I guess. At this point, it's getting to be really disappointing.
And you mentioned the CDC, so I want to talk about that, Nathalie Baptiste. You write, the shortcomings of our national plan are exemplified by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that's CDC, new recommendation that infected people can shorten their quarantine time from 10 days to 5 if they're asymptomatic. It's hard to believe. Yes, science evolves, but it's hard to believe this was based solely on science. When the CDC director also said, we want to make sure there's a mechanism by which we can safely continue to keep society functioning while following the science. And as he writes, so is it about stopping the spread or getting people back to work? What scares me about all this, about the picture you paint in totality, is that at a time when we need confidence in our public institutions, confidence in our public health institutions, confidence in our government to get these things under control, that all these people are, I can't use bad language on this program because we're broadcast on the air, but people have very fine-tuned BS detectors sometimes. And it seems to me that I worry that a lot of people are just going to lose confidence when they put all this information together, that they're just going to say, I'm still not getting straight answers, and I don't know if I should listen to these people at all.
Exactly. I mean, it almost started, this summer, or honestly late spring, with the very confusing mask guidance, where it was like, you can take off your mask if you're vaccinated, but you can't tell who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated. And a lot of people were like, should I take off my mask? Seems like I shouldn't take off my mask. And it kind of just snowballed from there. And I think I wrote this piece about a week ago. And since then, I think they've released even more guidance that I found even more confusing. And I was like, this is not helping someone like me who pays attention to the news, considers themselves well informed, and can kind of understand these things. Now, imagine, you're working 80 hours a week. You don't have time for all this nonsense. You read up the new CDC guidance, you're like, that doesn't mean anything to me. You're just going to go about living your life. You're not going to pay any attention to any of this. And you're not going to listen to them. What's going to happen the next pandemic when the CDC says something? Who's going to believe them?
Right, and who's going to trust, really? So, what do you remember anything of what this new guidance said? Was it?
I think they were fine-tuning the 5-day isolation period, but also some other states had taken it and turned it to mean, if you have like the sniffles, then you can come back to work. And it's kind of turned into this, like, people are like, oh, well, it's kind of like getting the flu. I'm like, okay, if you have the flu, don't go to work. You're going to give everyone else the flu. How is it 2022? And these are the conversations we're having. Don't go to work if you're sick. Doesn't matter if it's COVID or not. Please, for the love of God. And it's kind of just turning into this whole, well, the CDC said that we don't actually have to do that. And so we won't.
Nathalie, I called the bank yesterday, which I won't tell you how aggravating that was. But at one point, I talked to like 5 people. But at one point, I got a woman, and she could barely get her words out. And I said, what's wrong? She said, well, I have such a bad sore throat. And I was like, all of a sudden, instead of being like the upset customer, I was like, well, do you have any place where you can get some hot tea? Can you have any honey? You have any? I mean, it's like, but it's like, it's not my place to say to her, but it was like, what are you doing at work? You should be at home in bed. You sound terrible. And I did say, you sound pretty bad. And she said, yeah, I feel pretty bad. And it's like, okay, so the bottom line is people are being forced to go back to work before they feel right. So you also mentioned, by the way, I thought you were very gentle in the way you put this. You said that, okay, they're finally going to give out some tests, but they have to go to a website. Although the government's record of running websites, I forget how exactly you put it, but was like not like 100%,
I think I refer to them as train wrecks.
Yeah, train wrecks. That was it, train wrecks. So, and of course, we don't know if it'll be on time. We don't know if people understand it. Of course, you got to have a computer, right?
Yeah.
Internet. Not everybody does. So, okay. So digital divide. We've all heard about that. A lot of people in this country don't have access. We could go on. Old people can't get on because, some of them because they don't understand the technology. So, what do you think's going to happen now going forward?
Well,
you have any idea, or are you just like tearing your hair out like the rest of us?
I mean, I try to make educated guesses. It's January 6th. The last I heard from the president on testing was he told us to Google a COVID testing site near you, which, yeah, I think there are no tests available. That's the problem. The problem isn't that we haven't figured out how to use Google. So, no, no word yet on the website. But I believe their plan was that you go on the website and you request a test. So it's not quite sending tests to everyone. You still have to do a bunch of legwork. And at that point, you might as well just go see if your local Walgreens has any tests for sale.
Yeah, I put a screenshot, and of course the testing companies are now jacking up their prices, but I put a screenshot up the other day. No tests, no appointments available. No appointments available. When I did a Google search on COVID testing, like 15 sites, all of them, no appointments available. Okay, I Googled. Thanks. Now what? So, all right. Well, are you planning on writing on this anymore, or are you kind of burned? Oh, no. But before I let you go, Nathalie, I'm sorry. I don't usually do that to my guests, but I did not want to say, you mentioned before we went on the air that you got some interesting emails. Care to talk about any of them, or would you rather leave that aside?
One thing that your listeners should know is that I started at HuffPost last month. I was previously at Mother Jones, which is a much smaller place. So I'm not unfamiliar with getting what I call hate mail or I'm annoyed mail, but moving to a much bigger platform, it's a lot more email and people have a lot more feelings. So I find it kind of interesting, but I think the email I want to highlight is the person who sent me one line and all it said was, "I guess you miss Trump." I'm like, yes.
Yeah, of course, that's classic.
The Trump misser. I spent all of 2020 working 12 hours a day writing about how horrible everything was. It was me. You caught me. I'm sorry, everyone.
We all get that. If you dare to criticize any Democrat, well, wait till you start getting the how much is Putin paying you emails. So,
Putin paying me? I'm not a journalist, please.
Right. Well, thanks so much for writing this great piece. I really appreciate it. And again, my guest, Nathalie Baptiste, is an opinion writer for HuffPost. So, Nathalie, also, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour. Yeah. We'll have